the number one thing, you want to make sure that you get along with this person. That is the number one thing. Even if it's a matter of literally going to lunch with them or something, or when you sit down for a meeting, this is a relationship that you're going to have with someone for a minimum of 2-3 months. And if you're looking to really do your whole house, it could be upwards of a year or more. So number one thing, you have to get along with this person. When you have a conversation with someone, you'll see the type of person that this is.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grenzig. With me, as always, is John Cohen. How you doing, bud?
I'm good. We got an awesome guest. I think it's our first one of these types of guests. So I think our listeners will get a ton of value. He does some pretty cool stuff, and he's a good friend of ours, investor of ours. So I think I'm excited to get into it. Yeah,
no, me as well. Excited to see where it's going to go, because I think it could go a couple different ways. But yeah, we'll just bring him in and let him introduce himself. So with that being said, Kevin, thanks for joining us, bud.
What's going on, guys?
Doing well. You want to kick things off? Just take a few minutes, tell anybody listening, a little bit about you, your background, what you do, etc.
Absolutely. So I am a general contractor / investor / mentor. So diving into all three of those, I am the third generation. My brother and I own a construction company. We took it over from my father a couple of years back. He took it over from his father 20 some odd years ago. And we have been reconstructing homes on Long Island for almost 40 years. This year is, I believe, 38. So we're getting there. Also an investor. I've invested in multiple multifamily. I've done some flips here on the island. I've actually worked with you guys on a couple of things. Quick little plug. And on top of that, I also do mentor. I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. If anyone's not familiar, he's just kind of does everything in terms of coaching and motivational speaking, everything along the lines. It's something that I take a lot of pride in, I love, and I help out other business owners all over the island, and actually most recently all over the world too. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome. We'll definitely get into that. I'm curious to hear a little bit about getting into the family business side of things, because I actually give my dad shit sometimes, because his dad had an electrical contracting business that I think he took over from his dad, actually. It goes way back, actually. And then my dad was working for him, and he's the one that kind of broke the chain. It's kind of good because I didn't have to be the one if I did, so I can just blame him on not keeping it in the family. But I'm curious to hear what it was like for you growing up in that world, and then eventually joining the contracting business of your mindset of why you decided to do it versus doing something different.
So that is a great question, Chris. And if anyone is thinking about taking over their family business, it's actually one of the things that I mentor. You can reach out to me. I'm sure we'll get into information, but I give a lot of credit to, I joined a group called Compel CEOs. They have a next generation group. They really, really helped me tremendously with the transition, because, oh my goodness, it's make or break. You either love your family at the end of it or the other side. Mm-hmm. So it's a tough thing, but you can make it, really it's what you make of it. It's not what I was always anticipating on doing in my life. I actually, about 6 years ago, was about to start dental school. And unfortunately, we had something happen in the family. One of my family members got very sick. Luckily, he's okay right now. But at the time, I moved home and took a year off before I was going to started working with my family. Noticed how much there just was so backwards in the construction industry, and saw opportunity and never looked back. So it's, in terms of the family business, it's, like I said, it can go two different ways. So you have to make sure you mesh really well.
Gotcha. So I think this will be interesting for a lot of people too. And I think it might even help us personally. I'm assuming when you came in and saw a lot of old style ways of doing business, probably a lack of technology, I would imagine. I'm assuming a lot of that came from, I don't know if it's just your father or other people, but other people in your family that just, since 1982, if you're not watching the video, it's right above his head, have been doing it a very, either one way for that whole time or, very slow to kind of evolve from that. What was that process like for you of coming into an established way of doing things and trying to help, maybe the word is revolutionize or improve it, or, just kind of bring it up to modern day?
So besides hell, because that's a really great way to describe it, frustration, it's two generations just clashing head to head and seeing who can come out on top. That's basically what it was for years. So it wasn't until I took over with my brother where we really got some serious results. Everything was done. I mean, I'm talking, pencil and ruler, what went for doing takeoffs on projects, and, everything was written down in a notebook, and, one eye can see the job and nobody else in the office had any idea what was going on and needed to get updates from everyone. Since then, we've completely restructured the entire company. Everything's done very similar in terms of how the construction's carried out, but everything is it's seamless. It's I guess a lot of it is automated, and everything's done on a computer. I mean, if I shared my screen, I'm in the middle of doing estimates right now, and the whole thing is just plans and our CRM, and it's very different in that sense. So interesting.
Yeah. I think there's probably many people who are in a similar position as you, probably own a business, and we're always constantly looking at new things to implement, but you go through the idea of, okay, is this going to be worth the time, money, and effort to make a change and possibly make it better? But also maybe it doesn't, maybe it isn't a good fit. And, yours was obviously a big change, but oftentimes people are even looking for smaller incremental changes. Might only be a few years older, or, not a unsophisticated program, but maybe there's something better. How did you guys view the time and money and energy to kind of start making those changes, and what have been the results of your labor?
So with the changes, and you bring up a great point there, you don't want to just take 10 steps forward without, kind of testing the waters a little bit, because you can really, you can go overboard very easily. So when we were looking at certain things, I started to notice that, yes, there are programs out there that you can take 10 steps forward and completely restructure everything, where it has its, built-in accounting softwares and, your takeoff softwares. You can do 3D renderings of everything. It's, we figured, okay, one step at a time. So we took it where we found something that was very user-friendly, something that at the time my father could still use, and took baby steps from there. And it was actually really cool. And if anybody is looking to restructure the way they do things and put it into some sort of a software and kind of update things, we took the route of going with a company going with a software, I should say, that was still on the earlier side, where, like I said, we went with more of the user-friendly rather than the very tech crazy everything. And it was cool because we were able to guide the company, where we were making suggestions and changes that they should make, and they would make them. So it actually ended up being a win-win in that sense, where we've grown together. So it's something to keep in mind when you're looking to make that change.
What do you think, what part of the change that you made had the biggest impact to your business?
Let's see. I would say the major change was putting everything in one place, as opposed to, like I said, we used to have estimates being done by hand, And then in the field, you had a notebook that, you know, everything would be taken out and you had to bring it back to the office. And I mean, even signing up for something like Evernote where you can share notebooks, like that was a major change. It was a breakthrough, and that's something that you could do tomorrow if you wanted. But really putting everything in one place made a huge difference. It's web-based, so what that means is, you know, you can sign on your phone, you can sign on your computer. It's all there at any point to access. So that was huge.
Did you guys have, because I know sometimes at the top of the food chain, you want to implement something, right? Maybe, you know, banging heads with your dad or whatever it may be. You guys agreed that we're going to try this. How was it then integrating that and having the whole team do that? Like, how do you guys go about saying we're going to use this system and this is how we do it? And what were those steps like? Because I think it's extremely difficult to pick a platform or a software or whatever it is. And then after you pick it, how do you get people out of old habits of, you know, okay, let me go get the notebook, right? Like, how do you build on that, and how do you make that a everyday thing? Or is it hiring new people that are okay with the technology? But how do you teach an old dog new tricks when it comes to integrating it after you picked it?
Such a good question, John. So this was a struggle. For the first couple of years, it was, like I said, kind of just bashing heads for a while. What I learned in that is that anyone that you need to, you know, if it's some sort of a hierarchy where at the time my father was the end all be all decision maker. And a lot of people are in this position, whether it's your boss that, you know, maybe you want to climb up the ranks, or maybe it is your father or your mother and you're looking to take over this company down the road. All I can say is plant the seeds. And what I mean by that is make them think like it's their idea. And this is going to take longer. I'm going to just be totally upfront about it, but sometimes it took months. But just, you know, whether it's talking about, you know, bringing up a third party story. I'll give you an example. What I used to do with my father is I would bring up a story about how this other contractor that I had a conversation with, you know, they implemented the CRM and you know, their profits grew 60%. And, you know, their revenues grew 100%, and they're able to manage so much more without hiring anyone else. And he'd be like, oh my God, like that's insane. Like, that's crazy. You're telling me like all of this is possible. And then 2 months later, it'll be like, hey, Kev, yeah, we got to go get a CRM. Let's go get that CRM. And I'm like, that's a great idea. So planting the seed, that's number one. The second thing is, once you have it, and teaching an old dog new tricks, we had a lot of subcontractors that did not want to use this platform and still continue to not want to use this platform. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to get rid of them. And that's really the end of it. Fortunately, it didn't happen where we had to get rid of everyone, but there were a couple of people that it just, you know, if you want to move forward, some people are going to, you know, you give them 1 shot, 2 shots, and I mean, listen, by 3 shots, this person doesn't want to change. You're at that point, you're doing a disservice to them and yourself by keeping them on board. You have to keep that in mind. You know, as much as you are loyal to this person and they're loyal to you, you're literally doing a disservice by keeping them on board at that point, to both of you.
I like that, right? People, you know, I talk about it all the time. You know, we're early stage. Well, we're at the end of the stages, but we're getting rid of a major management company, and it's tough. But you're right. I think I say it all the time. You know, you're better off pulling off the Band-Aid and, you know, starting over or whatever it is, or bringing in the right people that you can grow with, as opposed to having that, you know, banging your head against the wall trying to figure it out, or always trying to make it right, or dancing on eggshells, right? Like, yes, okay, he might be the best plumber in the world, but if he's just not going to do it, now you're adding another element of work and detail that you're going to have to focus on, or you're going to have to do his work and inevitably find a better one, right? Or get him on board. So I think people don't talk about it enough, you know, trimming the fat earlier, you know, as opposed to just hanging in there. And like you said, you're just doing a disservice to both parties, right? You know, cut the ties, be on your way, continue doing your business. But I like that because, people don't talk about it. Everyone's, rah-rah team player. But at the same time, if you're trying to build a system and a company and integrate something, if people aren't going to buy in, well, then, on to the next, right? We'll just have to find the right people that want to play on our side as opposed to trying to make someone do something they don't want to do.
Exactly. I mean, it goes for it really is any relationship. If you're not a right fit and, you're looking to grow in this direction and this person's either looking to stay here or grow in that direction, it's, at the end of the day, you love each other as much as you love each other and you're loyal to each other, whatever that looks like. But if you're growing in separate directions, it's not going to work, so you're doing a disservice to each other.
So from after you integrate it and you get everybody on board, what are the things that you guys have seen that have just been that, let's call it exponential growth, or just what have you been able to do now that maybe you weren't able to do before getting the company running the way you guys wanted to have it run?
And that's another great question. So the major things here are you start to notice what your ideal jobs are, who your ideal clients are, and you start to build templates and go after those specific things. So I'll give you an example. A job comes in and it's all well and good. We used to just bid them and see, okay, did we get it? Did we not get it? And kind of what that looks like. And it would take us hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. What that did is we started to notice the jobs that we were getting, keeping track of them, and starting to build data around them. So it got to a point where, if somebody wanted to do a full renovation, that's typically what we're doing, completely disassembling a home, making it look brand new without knocking it down and building a new home. That's our bread and butter. And we started to realize that was our bread and butter. It wasn't the little tiny additions and the new constructions that we were going after, because those actually, we were just losing money and losing time. And keeping data and having it all in a software just makes it where, I'm doing takeoffs. I could do 6 in a week as opposed to probably 1 in 2 weeks. That's where the real exponential growth comes in. I'm not looking for estimators at this point in time because I can, like I said, it's not taking up a lot of my time right now. So that's major. And also identifying if a job is real in the beginning. And what I mean by that is when a job comes in, you can, put some very rough square footage numbers based on the 5 jobs that we did that are identical to this one. And I can say, okay, this is something that we should entertain because this is in our wheelhouse. Or, this probably is not something in our wheelhouse and we should refer it out to someone else, which we do a lot too now.
So I have a question because we were actually about to buy a house in upstate New York, and for whatever reason, things went sideways. And long story short, I was talking to some contractors about doing the work, and one guy said, it's just too small for me. I'm like, well, I'm basically building a new house. So what's not too small for you? But I said, can you make a referral? And he said, well, we don't refer people because if they don't do the work we want them to do, it's a bad reflection on me. So you just brought up, how you refer to. How do you guys pick the people you refer to? Because I'm sure if someone says, hey, I need a new bathroom, that may be something you can or cannot do, or maybe the profit's just not there, or maybe it's just not worth the time, or you're too busy. How do you refer that out? Or what steps do you guys take to make sure the people you're referring don't come back to bite you in the ass?
So we put together a system on how we vet subcontractors. Basically what I do is I use that exact same system for general contractors. So as of right now, I can literally give you a number. Over the last 12 months or so, I have about 5 general contractors around Long Island and in the boroughs that I refer work to. And it's literally, I don't expect anything in return. Sometimes I get a job from them every once in a while, but I don't expect anything in return. The whole point of that is to be able to provide the utmost value to everyone that comes in my direction. Any potential clients, and I vet them. Like, I do it like we do with our subcontractors, like I said. And I also tell the client, listen, still do your due diligence. It's at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you're a right fit with this person. So to answer your question and not go into super detail, that's
the key, right? Because people feel like, oh, it's a referral, okay, hey, do my job. Next thing you know, it takes them 8 months and they're pissed at you. But the answer is, like you said, this is from my experience. This is why I feel is good, because we do a certain level of due diligence on everyone that we work with. But you got to do your own, because it's buyer beware, right? You can't just assume because I gave you a phone number that the guy's going to be the best in the world. But to dig a little deeper on something you brought up, what I think is what everybody wants to hear. What do you guys do to vet out your subcontractors to make sure that they are on time, they are on budget? What are some of those? And it doesn't have to be, A to Z, right? But what are the biggest tips you can give anyone when they're, hiring a subcontractor and or looking for a contractor to make sure that they pick the right person to get it on time, on budget, blah, 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 all that good stuff?
So there is a long list of questions that you'll want to ask each one of them. And instead of me saying it, go to www.myboyscontracting.com. I just wrote a blog about it 2 weeks ago. It's on there. But a very quick and easy one is make sure you go see their work and make sure it's actually their work. Because I've heard stories of, I won't get into it too much, but I've heard stories of people showing other people's work, and it's, just make sure it's their work. Ideally, they're in the middle of doing the job. But like I said, there's a long list of questions. You want to know how many projects this person's taking on. You want to know what their typical project is. You want to vet them. Ideally, they're on social media. That's typically a good sign, because they're kind of with the times a little bit. Believe it or not, that's how I've been finding most of my subcontractors recently. If they're on social media, like they're actually putting a little bit of effort into their company. So just little things like that, but check out the blog.
That's awesome, because I think that's, anyone, from fix and flippers to people doing multifamily construction. Some people ask, how do you know you're making the right decision? I mean, we had that, we get that question all the time. And the honest truth is, listen, at the end of the day, you're going to have to make a decision. But I think coming from your standpoint, if someone could read that, I think it's just another tool to have in your belt that you can use if you need it.
So how do you, because you talked about for yourself, you can do a lot of different things, but you have things that you specialize in. I'm sure there's plenty of other contractors that have the same thing, but they continue to do a lot of different things. Is there any way from the person vetting the contractors to really figure out if they're the best contractor for this specific job, or it's a little bit tougher to do?
And that's a great question. It is a difficult thing because of exactly what you said. I mean, there's guys that will go and build a brand new 8,000 square foot house and still do your bathroom. Mm-hmm. So it's a really difficult thing just for that reason. If there is, but at the same time, they're out there, because I just recently found someone who literally just does bathrooms, and that's what they do. They knock out bathrooms all day, every day, and they're phenomenal at it. So you just have to really just do your homework, do your due diligence, ask the right questions, and make sure you know that there's no stupid question. There's not. Even if a contractor, tells you it's a stupid question, it's not a stupid question. They're just not someone who you probably want to work with.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I know that we have a ton of people that always talk about, the negatives on contract risk, and no, I can't find a good person to do my work, or they did the wrong thing. What are some questions that can help people avoid those answers, right? Like, because there's the war stories you hear, right? Contractors get the utmost worst reputation. They're all shit. How do you, what is the best way from being a contractor when someone comes to you and approaches you about a job? What are the things that not only you look for in them, but they should, and if it's another blog, it's another blog, but what are the things that people should want to know about a contractor to help them make their decision on who they should hire?
So that's a great question. The number one thing, you want to make sure that you get along with this person. That is the number one thing. Even if it's a matter of literally going to lunch with them or something, or when you sit down for a meeting, this is a relationship that you're going to have with someone for a minimum of 2-3 months. And if you're looking to really do your whole house, it could be upwards of a year or more. So number one thing, you have to get along with this person. When you have a conversation with someone, you'll see the type of person that this is. If it's someone who comes in and has, the raggedy clothes, and, they come in, don't take their shoes off and drag mud throughout your house, and, all of like the yellow flags that eventually turn into the red flags, that's the number one thing you want to look out for. On top of that, I would say questions that you can ask. This is something that we do cover in that blog, but I don't know. If I think of something, I'll let you know. I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head.
That's fine. I think the next part is, I think from a standpoint of, not all contractors are bad, but how do you manage expectations of clients today when they put on HGTV and they see a bathroom done for, $1,500 and it took, 17 minutes. How do you manage expectations when you're meeting with people and you're asking questions, they're asking questions, and you say, guys, this is what it's going to cost? How does that interaction go? Because I think there's a lot of expectations out there today that make it difficult from your standpoint, because, contractors get the shit end of the stick, but it takes two to tango. Typically, the client wasn't always the easiest to work with as well. But how do you guys manage those expectations? Because I'm extremely confident that I can say that people probably have crazy expectations today that probably weren't, didn't exist 20, 30 years ago when maybe your father, your grandfather started the company. It was probably a lot harder. It's probably a lot harder today than it was back then, when a contractor would come in with a pen and paper and say, here it is. Now, they fact check everything. So how do you guys manage those expectations?
Such a great question. And it's something that we continue to work on a week by week basis, because it's so important. The number one thing I can say is lay it all out on the table. Personally, we don't talk numbers during the first meeting, but I always like to ask the question of, listen, do you have any idea of what something might cost? Something like this might cost. And if a client comes back and says, oh yeah, sure, like a couple $1,000, and it's like a $200,000 job, I'll probably, I'll say, okay, it's probably not very realistic. And now I have an idea of kind of where this client's head is at. It's very rare that happens. I almost never get the HGTV mentality. I don't know if that's just a Long Island thing. I'm not sure how it is around the rest of the country. I know our prices here in terms of labor are definitely higher than the national average. That's a given. I think that's not just for construction, that's just all around our cost of living, everything. So that's the number one thing I like to do, but we really are trying to tackle this on a week by week basis. So we have implemented our software on this second meeting. So after you and I meet on our first meeting, I get an idea for the project. I get an idea of what you think the budget is. We then break out your schedule. So your schedule and your preliminary specifications. So on that second meeting, you have a total overview of exactly the day your project starts to when your project will end. And that immediately sets the expectation. So it's not, oh yeah, this will probably take like 4 or 5 months or something, and then it comes in at 8. It's like, no, listen, like this is 6 months and 2 weeks. Like this is what it's going to be. And I always build a little buffer in there. So if anything, we come in before that, but we like to set the expectations by just laying it all out in the beginning. asking that question of understanding where your head's at, making sure that we're on the same page, and laying it all out. It's important.
I think it's important. I think that goes for, not only any interaction with a contractor, an investor, but I think it makes a ton of sense that, you put all your cards on the table, right? We're not negotiating, I'm trying to buy a deal at a better price, right? It's not like I'm trying to negotiate. Yes, obviously there's a negotiation, but if you show all your cards, if you have the relationship, and it goes back to what you said, make sure that you have that right relationship. There's nothing to hide, right? And it's going to either get done or not. So it's important to understand that, it takes two to tango, as I said earlier. It's not always one person's fault. And if the expectations are there and they're met, that's probably, sets you up for, success going forward. Switching gears a little bit, because as an investor, not only in deals, but doing your own deals, what benefits from seeing so many jobs and doing so many jobs? How does that help and how does that hurt when you're making your own investments or when you're looking at a project for yourself? Because I think that there's a lot of people that have that fear of, I don't know how much it's going to cost to put in, a sink, right? Or whatever it is. But what can you say with the pros and the cons of actually doing it and doing it for so long? How does that help and hurt when you look at a deal?
And it does help and hurt. It's such a great question. So the number one thing is it helps because, renovations, like that's typically what a flip is going to be. It's, unless you're doing development, which you're building new, but typical flip, you're doing renovations. So it helps to have an idea to how to be realistic with your renovation budgets and do it in a pretty quick fashion here. But how it hurts is my prices are definitely going to be higher than what they probably will be for this flip. We're not doing everything in-house where it's going to take a very long time to do. And, that's the big thing. So helping it, your numbers, and it also hurts that your numbers, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
I'm not a flipping company, so it's a very different animal.
I've been, it's funny because I've been going to a lot of open houses recently because just looking around and seeing what's out there, whatever it is. And you go to these open houses and you walk in and these agents don't have a fucking clue. You walk in there like, oh yeah, no, this whole house costs you like $60,000. And I'm like, yeah, it's a 3,400 square foot house. You can't even put flooring down for what do you your kitchen's going to cost you $40,000. And coming from some type of experience, right? I've done a couple units and I've done a couple fix and flip, right? I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. Where do you get $60,000? Oh, we had a contractor bid it. I'm like, bid what? Because it's amazing that these agents don't have a clue, because you're right. Knowing your numbers helps because you know exactly what it's going to cost in the time frame, but it hurts because you go into a property that you may fall in love with and say, there's no way I'm going to get this done for X. What's the best recommendation that you can give as a contractor to someone that walks into a property and maybe they're overwhelmed or maybe the budget is just not going to work? What would you recommend from the person that's going to end up doing the work? How do you recommend talking to people when they're looking at a deal and, they want to buy it at work? It checks off every box except for it ain't going to cost 50, it's going to cost 100. And then vice versa, I don't know if the timing's going to work. What do you tell people?
So anyone who's going to look at houses, for instance, I actually, this is a great example. One of my buddies in my Compel group texted me the other day. He's looking at houses for him and his girlfriend. And he sent me a picture of the house and he was like, hey, listen, I'm thinking about doing a small little addition, about 20 by 10, just extending the master bedroom right here. And I said to him, listen, I can give you a very rough middle point. If you're looking to do an addition, you want to just figure somewhere probably around $200 a square foot. And if, that number goes up, if there's a ton of plumbing involved, if you need to start moving, if you need to move a gas service or an electrical service or something, and it goes down if it's just a box. So that's a great middle point number to work from if you're looking to do additions. Renovation numbers are always difficult. They're always very, very difficult. But I can say, if you're looking to do something. I don't even know. I don't feel comfortable just like splatting out a number. It really could vary. Like, I mean, I've done renovations where they're $100 a square foot, and I've done renovations that are over $200 a square foot. So it's a very difficult thing to just say. It's easy when you're doing the addition. That's a great middle point number. But I always tell people on Long Island specifically, I can't speak for the nation, but when you're looking at timing, you want to just figure worst case scenario. Just always figure worst case scenario. If you need to get permits for something, figure it's going to take 6 months, and that's probably not going to be the case, but just figure worst case scenario. You're not going to be into that house for a little while if you need to do something like that. That's the best advice that I can say, because if anything, you're just going to be happier because it didn't take that long.
And now that's specific to where we all live in Long Island, so I get it. But I don't think it's a bad principle to take outside, right? I know there are some jurisdictions and some cities and counties and planning boards that you go in and there's one guy there and it's he's the judge, jury, and executioner, right? And he just signs a piece of paper and you're good. But don't go in with the rose-colored glasses, because I think the only thing is going to happen is inevitably you're wrong. Is there a point that's too early to engage your contractor? Because I know that there are a lot of people that tour deals, they buy deals, and then they start bidding out the work, and they haven't had a set of eyes at all. When do you like to be brought onto a project that inevitably you want to take on? Or is it too new for people? Or what would you recommend if someone were to reach out to you and say, hey, I'm looking at a project, how can you help? When do you want to be part of that conversation?
So another great question. I'm actually writing this blog right now, so you'll probably see this up in about a week or so. But it's never too early. It's never too early. If you have someone that you like working with, we get it all the time. I would say more than half of our jobs, we're going and touring houses with a client before they even put offers in, just to say, hey, listen, like, this is going to be realistic in your budget. I mean, even if it's give or take $50,000, like, for $1 million home, it's going to be within a budget and we can get an idea. It's never too early. If you have someone you like to work with, invite them to the house with you. If they can make it, if they can't, take videos. I have people do that for me all the time, and they take videos. I get an idea of what the house looks like, and I can give at least some sort of an idea. If you know your numbers, which it sounds like some of the people that you work with, or that know their numbers, and then it's different. Then you can find the contractor afterwards, and it's all good.
No, that's important, because I know that a lot of people, we get the question all the time, like, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? The only way to do that, as Kevin said, is, engage your team early on. And if you haven't done a deal yet, that's the team members you should be building out. You should be building out the people that you trust enough and or have the relationship enough that don't mind taking that ride to the house or going into the house or whatever it is, because it's a lot harder after you buy it to figure it out than it is going in. And I'm sure bringing the right team member in, you probably notice things, or you may say, hey, listen, we have a really good expediter in this town, right? So just bringing in that contractor, whether it's in your backyard or, across the country, having that good person on your team is important. And I'm sure vice versa, a contractor doesn't want to be brought into the fire when, the project's demoed and there's no permits. He wants to be engaged earlier on, so you can plan it out properly and you get the schedule right? Because when they come in after the fact, you're always picking up pieces and putting out fires. When I'm sure that if they step in and they do it together, things are ordered properly, the timing's done. It's a lot easier earlier than later. So it's good to know that you agree with that, and that's something that, if they don't agree with that, it's probably someone you don't want to work with.
Yeah, I think it's really important to a couple points. What Kevin was saying is, like, one, it changes so much in your area. So just find somebody that's doing it or has done it in there, and you can kind of figure it out. And the second part is just start seeing how other people are doing it there. So if you're in the flipping world, find a home that's for sale that clearly is a flip, and go and see it and ask the agent how much they spent, and you get a decent idea of a ballpark number and the work they did, because you can find the old listing or you can find how it used to look. In today's world, that's not too tough to do. And yeah, maybe you can only find 60% of the homes that do it. Well, if you go tour 10, you'll have 6 that did it. and probably those 6 will all be slightly different, you'll start getting a good idea of what things cost in that area. You may not know exactly what a kitchen will cost, but you'll know, hey, if I want to turn it from this kind of looking house to this kind of looking house, it's going to cost roughly this. And then you can start going down that wheelhouse while also talking to contractors, also talking to other flippers. There's just a lot of different ways to do it. And then on the other side of the coin, I was talking to someone either yesterday or the day before, just on the multifamily side, and they were looking to get experience on the underwriting side. I said, you just need to download every single deal that's for sale, look at their book and see how things operate. How much do they spend for this? How much do they spend for that? And every deal is going to be slightly different, but eventually you'll know, hey, if this, new construction deal will run for this amount of money, and this, clusterfuck of an old shitty deal will run for this. And then you can kind of start to figure it out, while then again, also talking to people that are in the area and doing it. I was actually looking at a smaller, when I was looking for this deal I'm buying down in Florida, I got sent a deal that was like a major renovation deal, and in this really awesome location, but needed a ton of work. And the broker who brought it to me had 2 other deals that were selling for crazy higher. I think they wanted like $100 a door for this, and these were selling for like $215 a door or something. And he sent it to me, and I was like, wow, they were amazing buildings. It was great. And I said, like, those were selling. I was like, can you send me the information for those so I can just see like how it operates, what they spent and all this stuff? Because it's a way for me to understand, what work they did and what they spent. And I'm not going to steal their blueprint, but it's going to give me a really good idea of what it's going to cost me to kind of do it.
Sure.
So how much of actually, I have another question that you brought up, going back a little bit. You said when you're doing the flips, you're not exactly set up as a flipping business. What would be the difference from the way you operate now to how you would be operating if you were a flipping business?
I would do a lot more in-house. So it wouldn't be bringing every single subcontractor to every single trade to do everything. It would be the essentials. Like, if I needed an electrician, I would bring an electrician. Not typical that somebody would have electricians on staff, but you could. An HVAC company, I would bring them. But for doing sheetrock, for doing trim, for doing flooring, for doing all that stuff, I would have a lot of guys in-house, because it's at that point, you're doing it faster. You're not waiting for subs. You're not, which that can cause a lot of delays, especially these days. What I mean by these days is post-COVID. It's just everyone's schedules are all over the place.
Right.
But just in case people are listening months in advance, I would do a lot more in-house. Whereas right now, as general contractors, we do have in-house guys, but our typical job is it's a high-end custom home. We have them doing the finish work and what we refer to as the punch list work at the end. Everything else, for the most part, is subbed out. So that would be the major difference that I would structure the company as.
Gotcha. So would you say it's just, slightly less important for the work you do now to put that emphasis on speed of execution rather than flipping, where it's, we got to get this done as quickly as possible to kind of make our nut? Or am I not fully understanding it?
It's so not necessarily. It actually gets done quicker the way we do it now, because we're doing 5,000 square foot plus houses, so they're huge. For a 2,000 square foot house or a 1,500 square foot house, it's not that large, and it just, if you have everybody in house, you have 3-4 guys or whatever that can do a lot of these things. You're going to get it done fast. But if you have 3 guys trying to do a 5,000 square foot house, it's going to take a long time. Right. You want 10 guys on your framing crew at that point. You want a bunch of guys doing your flooring at one time, which would be a company. So that's the major difference.
Gotcha. So it's just because these houses are so much larger, the amount of people you would need would just be too big for you guys.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there any reason you haven't tried to do more of create that flipping style business for those smaller size homes, or no, is it just, what you want to do as far as business wise?
So we have something, and it's such a niche that we're looking to get as good as we possibly can with it and add as much value as we can to the clients. We did, I've done some flips in the past. I think I've done 6 or 7 or something over the last 3 or 4 years. It's just been getting extremely difficult. At this point, if you want to be a flipping company, you really have to put yourself out there and make it known that you're a flipping company in order to find deals. And essentially, you kind of have to be a marketing company. And I wasn't ready to just go off and start a whole new company. I'm still working on, our marketing for My Voice Contracting. So
I hear it. No, it's an important point because it's something that we've mentioned before, but it's that shiny object syndrome of, we would love to do it a ton. And we actually, on the last podcast, John and I just did one and we were talking about how come we don't do self-storage? And it's the same thing. You can only, put your focus in so many different directions. There's a billion things to do in the world. You've got to pick 1 or 2 at the end of the day. You can't do 100. So it was just really interesting to hear you say that. I figured that was the case, but I wasn't sure if there was something more specific that you saw why you weren't focusing on it.
The one thing, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So what has been, we're getting close to the end of the time, but I'm curious because you touched on a little bit. What's been the biggest impact to your business, positive or negative, through this COVID period?
So the negative was we definitely took a cash flow hit. I'm not gonna just sit here and say that there wasn't an effect. Our company specifically, we had a 6-figure loss in cash flow, which luckily we were okay to tough through. And, we got a couple of our loans too and everything. So I know it's something that a lot of people won't talk about, but I'll be the first person to say it. That was tough. And I'm sure a lot of people out there listening are thinking the same thing. Coming back to it, we've hit the ground running. Construction now, I'm not sure if it's because people were in their homes or what, but construction right now is out of control. Granted, we did up our marketing, and our company for 37 years was all word of mouth. For the last year, I've really put a lot into our Instagram, our Facebook, and that's really shown, because it used to be where we were getting maybe 1 or 2 leads a week, sometimes every other week, to where we're at this point over the last 8 weeks, we've got about 10 leads a week, pretty steady. So that's a drastic increase. Whatever the math on that, I think it's 500% increase. 7 or 8 of which are coming from Instagram. I'll put that out there for anyone who's not on Instagram. You're a contractor, you're a business. See what social media platform works for your company, and please just do it. Some it's LinkedIn, some it's Facebook, some it's industry specific, some it's Instagram. Get on it.
Yeah. Do you think, is it paid stuff or just putting stuff out and people see it?
It's all organic. Yeah, I haven't really paid for anything at this point. I did a couple of Facebook ads that I paid for, but $50 maybe. I don't think it did anything.
What do you think for somebody that is in a similar line of work or, is thinking about getting more into that content space? What do you think has been successful for you as you've started implementing it more?
So this is something that I encourage everyone to do. And I'll ask the question to everyone. Obviously, I can't see everyone raising their hands out there, but I'll ask the question: do you put anything in your personal life on your business social media? And I guarantee that if we had a room of 100 people, maybe 5 would raise their hands that they do. It's the number one thing that I can do. That I can tell everyone, because it makes you human. And what I mean by that is people trust you. People know that you're a real person on the other side of that screen. I have not seen one other contractor on Long Island. I've seen a few around the nation, and literally a few, I could probably name 2 or 3 that do what I'm saying. And it's just being a person, not just showcasing your work like every other builder does, or showcasing, doing those weird fake people, working in an office. Like, I don't even know what that stuff is, but you know what I'm talking about, those pictures. Yeah. Just be a real person, and it will come back to you tenfold. I promise you. Just start doing it today.
Yeah.
And video. That's the other thing. Yeah. Go all in on video.
Yeah. People want to work with people they know or relate to. So if you're it could just be something as simple as, they saw you going to, the same lunch spot and you ate lunch there, and they're, they relate to that. Or, you have a dog and they love dogs or something. I mean, just little things like that people can kind of just, continue to have that overlap of the same interests or personality or background. I think that's what people relate to and gravitate to, and why they end up, working with somebody like that. So I think that's huge, especially if you're running a lot of people do I do it do the social media stuff as a personal or as a company, if you are going to go that company route. So if it's My Boys Contracting, not Kevin, I do think it's important to have that personal aspect for sure.
Yeah. Just, it's the number one thing I can say. I saw a dentist in California who loves skateboarding, and literally like half of his Instagram is dentistry, and the other half is him just like shredding the streets in California. And my man's got like 20,000 followers and is now doing dental work for every celebrity in California, and started this like 3 years ago. So it's like that one thing. It's like, this is a person, like, he's cool. Like, this is really like, it's awesome. Like, and that's what separates you from the pack.
I love it. I think that's awesome. I think that's a great place to wrap up. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. I know you mentioned a little bit, but if people want to get in touch with you, follow along, learn more about you, get in touch with you, where can they do all that stuff?
So I run our Instagram. You can message me on Instagram. It's at My Boys Contracting. You can also email me, kevin.myboys@gmail.com. Anything about My Boys, if you want to inquire about anything, you have any questions, that email is myboyslongisland@gmail.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me. And I'm pretty good, so I should get back to you within a couple of days.
Perfect. Guys, if you have any questions in general, or you want to work with them, definitely go hit them up. And thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you got a lot of value out of it and you're not already subscribed, it would mean the world to John and I if you would do so. And if you are subscribed, please send it to a friend, family member, colleague, or someone you absolutely love that you think will get a tremendous amount of value from it. Kevin, once again, thanks so much for coming on, bud. It was great.